On today's show, are the Clippers and Paul George playing a game of chicken? Gonna be talking about it all on today's Locked On Off-Season Clippers.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir. You are locking in with the Clips. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers the first listen of your day, your team every day. I'm your host, Darian Vaziri, born and raised in LA, and finished my 19th season as a Clipper fan not too long ago. You can also follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod and subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for even more LA sports, NBA, and sports content in general. And Locked On Clippers is free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. And I want you to let me know what you think of the Clippers game of chicken that we're going to talk about with Paul George, which is kind of going on right now. And let me know if you think the Clippers are doing the right thing. And before we talk about this episode, it is brought to you by GameTime. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. But all right. So, as everyone knows, the talk of the basketball world right now is the Paul George sweepstakes, the Paul George saga. And we'll be having episodes all week coming about this whole situation. But let's just talk about the Clippers right now, right? And the game of chicken that they seem to be playing with Paul George. Paul George, we know, doesn't want to leave LA. He doesn't prefer to. He came here to win a championship. He came here with Kawhi. He's had a say in so many of the moves to get guys here. Get some of his friends. Reggie Jackson, John Wall, Russell Westbrook, even James Harden, who he knew. He wants to be here. But clearly the front office and Paul don't see eye to eye right now with the contract situation. Paul has one more year left on his deal that he can opt into. Kawhi had this same exact deal, but he re-signed. And that's kind of where all of this got a little murky. Because when Kawhi Leonard re-signed, it was like, okay, so, I mean, these guys came here together. Their timelines are going to align, right? Because their contracts have aligned. So it was then, talked about by media and asking Paul George whether or not he was going to sign an extension or what was the progression with coming to an agreement about an extension and all this. And Paul said, we are going to work together to work something out. So by all accounts, Paul George wants to be here. But he doesn't necessarily want the contract that Kawhi got. And Kawhi Leonard got that 3 years, $150 million. And that is where things get tricky because Paul George wants 4 years. He knows this is the last big contract he's probably going to get. And it was $152 million to be exact for Kawhi's contract. And Kawhi could have gotten 4 years, $220, right? The max. Paul George can try to get the max, and it's rumored that some teams will be willing to pay the max for him. But the Clippers clearly don't want to, right? And Paul George shouldn't expect to get the max. If he thinks that, he's just being greedy. The biggest question I have is, have the Clippers offered Kawhi's contract? My guess, because I don't know for a fact, and I'm going to try to get you guys more information on it. My guess is that they offered him a little bit less because he's not as good as Kawhi. And he even said, they can use his own podcast against him and be like, look, you even said that Kawhi is the number one option. So we're going to pay you a little less if that's okay. We've paid you the same amount the last couple of years. The production hasn't been there from you. But Paul could always say, at least I've been on the court, in more playoff games. And that's valid. But at the end of the day, it's clear what's happening. The Clippers don't want to pay him more than 3 years because they want the contracts to align, he and Kawhi's. He wants more than 3 years. The Clippers are seemingly confident, though, that he's not going to leave for Philadelphia. And I honestly would be in agreement with them. You think Paul George is going to leave his family? Like, his parents get to come to every game. I see them there. Going to ice cold Philly. And even when he said it's not about winning a championship above all. And plus, like, let's be honest, I do think Paul George wants to get paid. But, like, does he want to get paid that bad where he'd, basically go across the country? I don't think so. He just had such a huge contract. He's made a lot of money in his career. He's got a beautiful house. He's got a beautiful, he can do what he wants. Like, it's not like this guy's struggling financially, at least I don't think. But, of course, a lot of players do struggle financially after the league. But, we're in a new era with new contracts. Like, I have a hard time thinking that that's going to happen. But who knows? I just don't think, even if so, Paul George is the type of guy, especially with what you're seeing him already do in terms of his off-the-court business avenues, I don't think Paul George is the type of player that's going to go bankrupt or anything after his career's over. He's pretty smart in that respect, it looks like, and it seems. So, like, I don't think he's fiending the bag that hard. And honestly, if I'm the Clippers, I would play chicken. I would be like, look, bro, are you actually going to go? Are you actually going to go to Philly? Or, because there are not that many teams that are going to be willing to just sign him outright and have the cap to sign him outright. Orlando, you want to go all the way to Orlando, Florida, and play with a bunch of young dudes instead of potentially taking, 4 years, 120. Or 3 years, 120. So $40 million a year. But man, as of me recording this episode, OG Anunoby, who's is a fantastic role player, got paid $200+ million, $42 million per year for the Knicks. Now, of course, people aren't going to sign Paul George to that right now. At least I wouldn't be so sure. But if that's the market for OG Anunoby, Paul George's camp can be like, look, I know he's younger, but he's still a role player. Like, this is Paul George we're talking about. And also, as I'm filming this, I'm probably going to make an episode on what the Knicks moves mean for the Paul George situation. But Mikal Bridges being traded for 5 first-round picks, like, this is the market for role players. Or maybe it's just the Knicks. I don't know. But, like, if I'm negotiating and I'm Paul George and his camp and Aaron Mintz and those guys, I'm like, look, you're talking about a guy who's a consistent 22 points a game on great shooting splits. You can use him off ball. You can use him on ball. He can do a little pick and roll. He's consistently made the playoffs in everywhere besides that 2022 season where his co-star was out the entire year and he missed 51 games himself. And basically, the only 2 seasons he's missed the playoffs is when he's missed the majority of the season. When he's playing the majority of a season, he will get you to the playoffs. And the Warriors, not the Warriors. But yeah, the Warriors, we're going to talk about them later. But, a lot of these teams, though, have made the playoffs. They don't have that issue, but just another star caliber player can't really hurt. And Paul George, he has his weird statements where he's like, I wasn't on the ball enough. And then he'll be like, I was on the ball too much. Besides that stuff, he's pretty adaptable in playing in different teams because he has off-ball ability. But anyway, the game of chicken is alive and well. The Clippers don't think he's willing to go to the East Coast and pack everything up here. Like, his family is here. He said he wants to retire here. So I don't blame them. But let me know what you think in the comments. Is it too risky? Coming up, going to be talking about Philadelphia and the recent reports that they might be second guessing paying Paul George the max. Are they still the biggest threat for PG-13? Going to be talking about that coming up. I got to tell you a little something about GameTime. GameTime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. It's a great place to get really good deals on tickets last minute. And, depending on work or what you're doing or how many people can go with you, you sometimes just don't know whether or not, all your logistics going to a sporting event. And with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, GameTime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. And for people that I'm speaking to, probably majority Angels and Dodger fans. Pick out any specific game that you want to go to, and you can get flash deals by saving even more with the exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download GameTime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guarantee. All right. So, the recent reports from Philadelphia, because initially, the team that we've heard as the most rumored to try to go for Paul George has been the Philadelphia 76ers. They are kind of, it seems like at least the fan base is frustrated with Tobias Harris, former Clipper Tobias Harris, in that third option role. Maxey and Embiid had a pretty big series against the Knicks. We could have a conversation about their lack of being able to close games, and we've seen that as a consistent theme throughout the Embiid era in the playoffs. But you can also say they didn't have that clear-cut third guy. And as we know, Clipper Nation, Paul George right now as a second option is dicey. As a third option, sounds like the same thing we're talking about James Harden. So right now the Clippers are dealing with two guys that should be third options on a championship team, and then a first option who's not available enough. Paul George being able to be that clear-cut third option behind Embiid and Maxey, especially given the way that he plays, he doesn't hold the ball as long as a lot of other stars in the league. He can work quickly off the catch. He can come off screens. He would be, I think, very good for them. The thing is, if you pay him a max, which is obviously a terrible investment, as we know, Clipper Nation. That is not a good investment at this age to pay Paul George a max contract. You're not going to have that much flexibility with under the new CBA. You'll definitely be over the second apron, and you won't be able to get very good complementary guys. So, especially with the health of Embiid and Paul George, that's a huge risk for the Sixers. And I think that's the reason why the recent news suggests that they're second-guessing it a bit. They're second-guessing going for Paul George. And also, I think it's a little funny and maybe not coincidental that this news comes out after the podcast that I referenced just a couple episodes ago from Paul George, saying that championships, it's not even about chasing championships, it's about playing the right way. Like, if I'm a Sixers executive, I'm like, they've given you all these stars. Like, you couldn't have gone these stars without you and Kawhi signing off. And for the record, like, everything about Kawhi Leonard and Paul George's relationship reportedly is good. They seem really cool with each other. On the court, off the court, Paul George speaks really well about his relationship with Kawhi. So I don't believe there's any tension there. There might be a little bit of bitterness from Paul George that Kawhi signed that extension in the middle of the season. It's not the contract that he necessarily wanted to align with. But there also could be, Paul's like, Kawhi's his own man. That has nothing to do with my contract negotiations. And I think that the podcast comments could turn some executives off in Philly and be like, dude, this guy just doesn't get what he wants. We're going to pay this guy $50 million. And then he's talking about the trade. He's talking about the trade and how they lost stuff. It's like, bro, you averaged 19 points. We all watched it. You averaged 19 points a game in the playoffs without Kawhi Leonard. The guy averages 1.5 paint touches per game. Terrence Mann averages 2.4. Russell Westbrook averages 2.4. And he's a second unit player. The other ones are bigs, obviously, Tice, Plumlee, Zoo. But come on, bro. Like, we all saw it. We all saw it. So, by the way, that's coming from Shams Charania. He says the Philadelphia 76ers' interest in pursuing Paul George has significantly waned in recent days, and the franchise is expected to be aggressive elsewhere with its salary cap flexibility and draft capital leading into next week's NBA draft. This was about a week ago. This was a week ago that Shams tweeted that. So Paul George's interest has apparently, or the Sixers' interest in Paul George has apparently waned, and I legitimately think that part of that is the podcast comments. I'm being serious. So if I'm the Clippers, I'm like, yep, this is going according to plan. Is Paul George going to go to Orlando? Like, absolutely not. Like, I just don't believe that Paul George is going to go to a young team playing basketball the right way. I watched their offense in the playoffs, Orlando. It was very one-on-one. Most of these teams play the offense the Clippers do. You know what I'm saying? But here's, most of the teams in the NBA play the offense the Clippers do. A heavy dose of high ball screen, maybe an occasional off-ball flare screen or something, pinned down to get someone in movement. Occasionally we give the ball to Zoo at the high post and run some stuff, but not really much. And then ISO. ISO pick and roll. Like, that's the NBA now. So we don't run a movement offense. I mean, who are the teams that run movement, motion-based offenses? I know Philly incorporated more of those principles with Nick Nurse, but they're not. I wouldn't say they're like that completely. I'd say the Warriors, Sacramento Kings under Mike Brown, the Denver Nuggets because they run a lot of motion through Jokic at the high post, and that's about it. I think Indiana, though, I will say, play pretty unique, where Halliburton does start off the possession with the pass usually, the go-ahead pass, the hit-ahead pass. So that's basically it. So coming up, I'm going to be analyzing that comment more about Paul George and wanting to play the right style of basketball, and also what the conversation has been recently about the possibilities of a sign and trade. Going to be talking about that coming up. All right. So the Paul George sweepstakes, the Paul George saga is getting far more intense than I ever thought it would. I never thought that Paul George would have major conversations about leaving the Clippers at any point since he got here. I really thought, especially after we signed him to that huge contract, after he choked in the bubble, we gave him that much money. And to be honest, besides 1 year, he hasn't really delivered like that. And health is part of the equation. Availability does matter. The best ability is availability, as they say. He hasn't really delivered on his end of the bargain. So besides that conference finals. But did he come to get us to the conference finals or to the title? He came here for the title. Conference finals he had already been to twice in Indiana in 2013 and 2014. It's crazy though that Paul George didn't win a series since 2014. 2016, first round exit. 2017, first round exit. Granted, no other co-star with him. 2018 he did though. 2019 he did though. Lost both. So, the possibilities, though, of a sign and trade have gotten louder. And I was telling people, Paul George doesn't have to do that. But here's the thing. If nobody wants to sign him outright, none of the teams that can sign him outright for max money want to do it, then he's got no choice, which is why the Clippers want to play chicken. But then there's the possibility of a sign and trade, where a team that wants him but doesn't have enough money to sign him outright would get him and then sign him to a new contract, but they'd have to be giving out salary. So then, in this case, the Clippers would be getting something, which would not be the worst case scenario. But here's the thing. There's no way, in my opinion, just my opinion, I don't know the future, and I know a lot of the anti-Paul George crowd, essentially a lot of the stans, but I know that a lot of Clipper fans are over Paul George's act as well. I just know there's a lot of Clipper fans that are over this whole era. But I don't know that many Clipper fans, like Clipper fans before Kawhi and Paul got here, that want to see us run it back but without Paul George. Because it's going to be hard to get better players than that. You know, I mean, you're not going to get a star in return. You're probably going to get some role players. But in which case, James Harden is still your second option, and I just don't think you're going to win a championship with that. And Kawhi has to carry too much of a weight there offensively. When he's not playing, what are we going to do? But the sign and trade is not a bad situation, because if the Clippers can get somebody young, whether a young player now or some draft capital, this could also potentially give us more flexibility to say, hey, if we want to hit the reset button, we can. And that is what I want, because I again, just don't believe that Kawhi can stay healthy. I said it last summer, and this whole past year I was knocking on wood and doing all that thing. I can't do it anymore, guys. And I'm sorry for sounding like a doomer. I want him to be healthy, of course. But there's something that's going to jeopardize the chances of that we're going to talk about in an episode very soon. I'm just trying to get as many different episodes as I can out there, because there's so much great Clipper content to talk about. And I know I haven't been good enough, especially with my computer being in the shop. I need more episodes for you. So I'm sorry, Clipper Nation. I really am. But the sign and trade stuff, right? It's very intriguing, because then we start looking at what teams want him. And then he could obviously opt in, and then that's when the sign and trade happens. Because he has to do that. Because if he opts out, then it's like he can only sign with the team outright. We can't get anything for him. So here's the thing. June 29th, he has to make his decision. We're going to find out in 2 days. So this news is going to happen. It's coming up. Either Paul George is opting out, so it's either max with someone else, But if he opts out, he is most likely re-signing with the Clippers. I don't think he's going somewhere else for big money. I don't think anybody wants to pay him max money. He's going to want to come back. And he's going to take a team-friendly deal, in which case the Clippers will have won, and then they can re-sign Harden and run it back like they want. But if the sign-and-trade happens, we're hearing that he's opting. If he's opting in, that means he's probably gone. Because he's definitely 99% chance says that he's not opting in just to play that last year of his contract, then wait for next year to have these tough conversations. Even though $49 million is a lot. But here's the thing, right? Here's why this sign and trade stuff has picked up some steam in the last couple of days. The team we've always heard about when it comes to sign and trade is the New York Knicks, right? The New York Knicks. The New York Knicks have essentially taken away their chances of getting Paul George with these moves to get Mikal Bridges and re-sign OG Anunoby. I was actually going to do an episode with Locked On Knicks, but they're out. As Chris Broussard said, the Clippers are out when we were talking about getting Kawhi. So that's over. The Knicks are done, right? Now, this is the team that, in my opinion, is a very dangerous candidate to get Paul George. Very dangerous candidate to get Paul George. The Golden State Warriors. The Golden State Warriors are in a situation where they're looking at the Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Steph Curry trio. That's run its course. Klay is not the same player after all these injuries. Draymond Green's on the decline. Hell, Steph Curry's on the decline. But Steph Curry, they still believe, and honestly, it's like, why wouldn't you if you're a Warriors executive or someone that, even though he looked slow, looked like he slowed down the last 2 seasons, he is still one of the best players in the NBA. He's been there, done that, and been the best part of a championship team, clear cut twice. There's not that many better options, and you want to milk Steph Curry for everything he's worth before he retires, especially because he wants to be with your franchise forever. So you want to try to give him a chance to win again. And that may not include Klay Thompson in those plans. But regardless of if it includes Klay Thompson or not, they might be interested in Paul George. They lacked a second guy, a clear-cut second guy. And even though I don't think Paul George can be the second best player on a championship team, so I think it'll just be all for naught. It'll get them closer, but they won't win, in my opinion. It will help them immensely. And for me, I think it will help them immensely. I think Paul George would be awesome in Steve Kerr's system with Steph Curry and movement. It would encourage him to move without the ball more, maybe take away some of his ball-pounding tendencies. But, of course, you're not just going to change who he is. He is still going to ball-pound at times. He's still going to make ridiculous decisions. He's not going to get them to the championship. So if they want to pay Paul George, by all means, go for it. But it has really picked up steam, this whole Golden State thing. And there was a report saying that the Warriors might be prepared to offer him a full max deal. In which case... And here's the reason why it's dangerous. It's California still. It's only a couple hours away. Playing with Steph Curry, right style of basketball. That's a tempting offer, in my opinion, for Paul George. It is a tempting offer. Question is, are the Warriors willing to do it? And what are they giving up? Are they giving us Kuminga? Because I would absolutely take that. That solves our 4 problems. Now we have an athletic 4 with a bunch of upside. How about Moses Moody? You're going to give us Moses Moody? But what about the contract? Are we getting CP3 or are we getting Wiggins? I'm taking Wiggins to guard the point of attack. That solves a lot of our issues as well. And then he can maybe play the 4. Chris Paul? Are you kidding? I love CP3, but we don't need more old. I still don't think that's a championship team, though. My dream would be if we do the sign and trade, we get Kuminga. Now we're starting to think, okay, we're looking at a rebuild now. Because, come on. I just don't think it's... I don't think it's going to happen in the first year of a new stadium, but, I just don't believe in this anymore, guys. I don't want to lie to you. I don't. I really don't. But, yeah, sign and trade, it's looking like a possibility. It really is. And we're going to be giving you all the updates coming up in the coming days. So, yeah, we'll see where it goes. Let me know what you think of the Clippers game of chicken. Is it too dangerous? What would you like to see in the sign and trade? It seems like the Warriors are the only team that could really happen. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod. Subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for even more LA Clipper, LA Sports, and NBA content. Locked On Clippers, by the way, free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Hit the notification bell, comment on the video. The age-old proverb continues. Go Clippers.